I took a solo road trip to California, rented a car, and just like drove around Northern California and took photos.
What was the biggest challenge when you were first starting out?
I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to fund myself.
Hello, everyone, ladies and germs. Welcome back to Low Key Legends. I'm Britton Stepetic, your host, where each week I am honored and privileged to talk with some of the most amazing and creative people within the creative space. And this week is a real treat. It's a special episode because I have the honor of interviewing my friend Karyll. We went to design school together at Mass Art and graduated together, but his journey has been a little bit different than mine, and I think it's a really beautiful story to share about adventuring and following your passions. So, who is Karyll? Karyll is a multidisciplinary designer fueled with a passion for discovering systematic solutions for any conundrum through analytical thinking, while keeping in mind the importance of simplified usability, pleasant interactions, and captivating visual presentations through design. Currently, he is a full-time product designer at Workday. In his free time, you'll find Karyll outdoors with his camera, driven by a passion for adventure and exploration. We're going to dive really deep into that. He puts himself into physically challenging situations to get shots that you would be blown away by. He currently lives in a Mercedes Sprinter van and has been doing the van life for a year and 5 months. But right now he's currently stationed in Colorado. So without further ado, welcome, Karyll.
Sheesh. Wow, what an intro. Made me seem so professional, even though I'm all over the place.
Well, you're professional, even though you're in a van and probably having to shit in a gas station or on the side.
That is so accurate. Yep.
I think that it takes a certain type of courage and dedication to pull off van life. So I'm actually really curious how that's going and what it's like to live in your, like 12 foot by 7 foot
Yeah.
van?
I could do a quick tour. So there's my queen bed. It's pretty spacious, and then I got a closet right there. I got more storage, and there's my pup, my co-pilot, and then the driver's seat and storage, and that's about it. Fridge space and all that stuff, the sink and all the decorations. But
So how did you even get into van life? What made you want to start?
yeah, van life pretty much just came into my radar pretty like randomly. So everyone's aware of the pandemic. I moved to Colorado right before the pandemic happened, like January of 2019. Actually, no, January of 2020. And I kind of got stuck because I felt super isolated. And everyone was going into isolation mode, and that made it even worse. Didn't have friends in Colorado, didn't have anything to kind of look forward to because my job was still actually in Boston. Um, and so I just had a lot of kind of self exploration to do, figuring out what I actually wanted to do and why I made this move. I actually moved because of my ex at the time, but in reality, part of me didn't actually wanted to move, and so I was really just trying to figure out what happened, what I was doing, where I'm going, that kind of stuff. And the pandemic actually bloomed a lot of that for me. And I immediately decided to just kind of take what I got and what I can do in the time being. And that sprouted the idea of getting a dog, my dog Mackie, getting a car at the time, and started kind of just exploring what Colorado has to see. And that's what drew me into adventuring and exploring. When I used to live in the East Coast, you're kind of stuck in like the city life, right? Like I grew up in Boston, or I grew up in New Hampshire. And when you're in New Hampshire, there's some nature stuff, but it's not drastic. Like you do outside stuff, but it's not like super outdoorsy. in my opinion. And then when I moved to Boston, I was stuck in the city, but I still loved exploring Boston. I walked around the city, took photos. That's how I got into photography. And then, yeah, and I kind of lost that when I moved to Colorado. But then when I got the car, I started realizing like, oh, no one's out there. There's no traffic. I could just go anywhere and no one's gonna stop me. So me and my dog, in my Jeep Compass, tiny car, put a mattress in the back, and I started just car camping everywhere. And that I was like, okay, I could do this full time. I'm sick and tired of paying rent, and it's not even mine at the end of the day. And I'm just like, okay, what can I do to have a living situation and also explore? And then I actually like started this was when I was really sucked into YouTube, and then van life popped up in my discovery thing, and I was like, oh shit, I'm getting sucked into this type of, I don't know, it was kind of a consuming thing at the time that I couldn't grasp yet because I didn't have a plan. But once I started realizing like, oh, I could do that, like that's something that I could do in the meantime and then plan for the future. So after I got the idea, like during car camping, I got the van, started van life, and now I'm here.
I think it's a good opportunity where we can backtrack a little bit. It's pretty amazing that you can do van life while working for Workday. And so
Mhm.
what is the kind of technical specs that you have going on?
I have a thing called Starlink. It's one of Elon Musk's projects. Basically, it's an antenna thing where it's connected to a router, and when I turn it on, it collects a satellite from like a SpaceX satellite and takes it back, and I can have service anywhere. So basically, if I go on top of a mountain, no service, I just plug in my router and I have service. I could work anywhere, and it's surprisingly really good internet. To the point where I don't game anymore, but I used to game earlier in the days of van life, and I was playing Modern Warfare, no lag, on top of a mountain. And I was like, "What is this life?"
What was the biggest challenge when you were first starting out?
I had a lot of fear about it to the point where the van was just sitting there unused for a couple months, and I would just like after my lease ended March of 2022, I just like kept adding monthly payments to my lease because I was so scared of starting van life. And then I just pulled the trigger like April. I decided, okay, May's my last month. I'm gonna start van life. If I don't like it within 3 months, 6 months, go back into apartment living, sell the van, and you'll probably make money out of it. Sprinter van. So I just pulled the trigger, ended the lease, actually got rid of all my stuff. Didn't even think of selling it because I didn't want to put myself into that stress. So got a storage unit, started van life, and then I wanted to make sure like I had internet. I had a powerful power source, uh, good enough to make sure that I can power my internet and my laptop. And at the time, I had a hotspot. I didn't even have Starlink yet. And I was getting into meeting calls, and it wouldn't be ideal. Like my internet was really bad, and so that was another fear of mine. Like, oh, I can't sustain this. Um, Work's gonna be upset with me. I can't even keep up with work anymore because my internet sucks. And within like a couple weeks, I decided to get Starlink, and ever since then, I never had issues with internet. And that like I feel like that's the thing with van life is it's gonna something's gonna be in on your plate added without you realizing that it's gonna be like a hurdle. But once you like figure it out, it's such a lesson in the moment that can address a lot of like different things. Like for example, so many things break in here, and I'm like really handy. Like I figured out how to be handy because I wasn't even close to being handy before I started van life. So now I'm like I can fix anything. I can even fix the van. I wasn't a car person before I started van life. Um, so like just things like that you just learn on the daily. That's really another thing to be like really grateful about. with van life.
You had sent me this really, really cool, I guess, fact where you logged 40,000 miles in a year traveling around. And I did the math, and that's the equivalent of growing across the United States 13.8 times. So I'm curious if you've hit up all the greater 48 states, and if not, which are still left, or maybe you don't want to tackle.
Yeah, it's funny because I've looped back the west side, west of Colorado, twice. So I've done like the Pacific Northwest twice. I've done like the southern states, west, south, southwest states twice, but I haven't actually touched van life on the other side, only
Mm.
because there's really nothing to see. I've done that drive from Denver to Boston twice, three times, Denver to Michigan, Denver to Chicago, and there's just no draw for me. I don't feel like there's anything like I hate staying in cities. I hate driving around traffic with the van. And so the only draw for me with the van life really is like seeing nature, seeing landscapes, and being in the mountains for certain periods of time and just being stationary there.
Actually, this jumped into my head. Do you have running water?
Kind of. For the most part, I have water jugs. So I have this guy, like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
at a time, 4 to 6. But I also have, yeah, I have a sink where I do a lot of things. I shower in it actually, uh, worst case. But yeah, I do have running water, but it's not the best because I have to do like 6 gallon at a time.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, it's you figure it out, right? It's like one of the nuances of van life.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm like, you showed a sink before. And so I was just grabbing water myself, and I was like, oh, how do you do that other than be picking up water? Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go to like these dump stations or gas station. They have a spigot or faucet, fill up water there. It's a slow process, and I don't drink the water on the sink. But I do have a filter, and sometimes I do trust the water because they have signs like drinking water, potable water, and I trust the water. But for the most part, I don't really drink through the faucet or the sink. Um, but yeah, I mean, it works, right? I have my water jugs. So
Yeah, right on. Can you talk about your kind of journey, kind of stumbling into photography and how that started for you?
after design school, I realized like, oh, I don't have to do deadline. I don't have deadlines. I don't have to like do all-nighters. And so I just got all this time to myself and I realized like, what am I gonna do now? Um, so the after graduating, Ted actually Ted is one of our closest friends. And he invited me to go to London with his sister. And I was like, oh, traveling, maybe I could get into that. And so I don't remember whose camera it was. I think it was Eric's. I borrowed Eric's camera and I was like, maybe I'll just take this with me and snap some photos when I'm in London. And so we were there for a week and a half. And the first couple days, Ted and I would just walk around the city and it was so peaceful and we would just bring our cameras and walk around and I would find like this creative kind of motivation to try different angles with the camera.
Oh, I love that.
I got back to Boston after that trip and I realized like, oh, I want to keep doing that because I paused for like another couple weeks and I realized, oh, I want to get my own camera. I want to go take photos in Boston, maybe go to another city like Chicago and take photos there. And that's what I did. I like went into trips with friends, different cities. Actually did that same year, or then I think it might have been the next year. I took a solo road trip to California, rented a car, and just like drove around Northern California and took photos. And that was then I realized like, oh, this is like my next passion. Because design when we were in school, I thought I was like, oh, this is gonna be passion for the rest of my life. I can't really see myself doing anything else. But ever since then, design has kind of taken a step back. I still love design. I still love doing what I do, but photography's kind of taken over the throne for me of like, oh, this is like my baby. I love doing this thing. And so I've never wanted to monetize it. I've never wanted to turn it into a job or like get gigs around photography because I did that every once in a while. Like I did wedding and I did like small brand stuff. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't why I'm doing photography. And so that's why I'm so far I've turned down brands. I haven't collaborated with anyone towards my photography because I want that to be my thing. Yeah.
Is there a brand or a company that you would accept a job from?
If Nat Geo hit me up, I'm like, take me somewhere. Or if like Sony was like, try this new camera, try this lens and go somewhere, I'm like, yeah, take me anywhere. So those would be like if it was related to something and I had the freedom to express what however I want with that brand deal or that collaboration, then I would easily take that job.
In terms of gear, what kind of camera and lenses are you using right now?
So my cameras right now, I have two cameras. My main one is Sony A7R3. And then the other one, the sub. I like having two cameras so that I don't have to switch the lenses. So I just have two cameras, two lenses, quick and replace whatever lens I want to use. And so yeah, A7R3, and then I have an A7 II, Sony A7 II. Those are my go-tos. They're kind of dated now. I'm planning on getting a new one, which is the updated of my R3, Sony A7 R5. And then the go-to lenses, I really love prime lenses. So the reason why my photos are so crispy and I love just keeping the detail in is because prime lenses mean like they don't have zoom. They're just like, for example, 35 millimeter. That's the lens that it is. That means like all the glass in that lens is specific to 35, and so there's no like it doesn't go down in quality. If like for example in a zoom lens for I'll give you an example of 25 to 70 millimeter lens. Those lenses with a zoom, they kind of drop the quality down because you have to accommodate between the different zooms. And so prime lenses, yeah, my go-tos are 35 millimeter, 14 millimeter prime, G Master Sony.
How do you capture those beautiful images of animals in the wilderness? Especially like I'm assuming it's hard to get close to wild animals like mountain goats, etc. How are you capturing that?
When I want to try out wildlife stuff, those I need to be far away. So I have the 100 to 400 millimeter zoom lens from Sigma. So I have a pretty good range of lenses and I just play around with them. And I also, for my videos, I've slowly been getting into the video stuff. That's why I want to upgrade my camera. Most of my videos right now are drone footage. And my go-to for drones is the DJI Mini 3. I just love DJI stuff.
Your work is so cinematic. It's like watching beautiful, expansive shots like Anthony Bourdain's show, No Reservations. What are some of your biggest influences?
I love watching travel stuff. And yeah, Anthony Bourdain, Discovery stuff, Planet Earth. Those are like my motivation to like keep doing what I do.
What does like a typical day look like? Are you taking like breaks and then shooting photos?
So I'm just gonna give you kind of a average day. I would try to catch the sunrise wherever I am, and either just sit outside, have a coffee, or if I'm in a cool location, set up, take photos. That's my morning routine up to like 8 or 9 a.m. Then my first stand-up meetings happen. And I would say that first 6, 7 a.m. to noon, that's when I'm most productive for my job. And then I have the afternoon to explore, do whatever. I sometimes have meetings in the afternoon, but most of my meetings are in the morning. So I would either go drive around or go to the park, let Mackie out, and do whatever I want to be active for the day, or go on a hike, that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day too, that's when I get to relax and just sit back. And sometimes I have like Netflix on and then I get bored and so I start working again. And I think that's that morning space and that late afternoon to evening space is when I get really productive for work. And in general, that's how my balance have been happening in a day to day is I just have work, play, work, and rest. And I think that's worked out for me.
To me, it sounds like you, through work and through kind of the flexibility of the job, have been able to truly design your life in a way that works for you, but also work day. And it's this kind of harmonious balance. And I think that's perfect for a designer by trade to design their life to fit their needs, wants, and dreams and desires. I think you've done an incredible job of that. And we probably all need to take a little bit of a step back and evaluate how much time we're working.
Yeah, I couldn't have put that in better words.
What's the biggest lesson that you've taken away from Workday and this designing of your life opposed to other jobs?
So when I used to work at Cisco, I kept over delivering to the point where I was just like, here, take all this designs, figure it out. And now my designs are even, I feel like the quality of my designs and deliver are even higher because I am more aware of what I want to give out and what should be done to make sure what I'm delivering is actually higher quality. I used to think like, oh, the more screens you make, the more prototypes, the more arrows, the more things that you see in the artboard, that's when you're like, oh, I did so much. I did that. They shouldn't be complaining. Like, I value my work more now that I'm showing less, not delivering less, showing what really is important in a specific like workflow or UI or button, really crafting.
I guess through the journey of life, you've discovered this kind of newfound sense of quality and delivering the right amount, opposed to over delivering via doing too many things that may not be applicable and will only cause more work down the road because it kind of adds confusion.
Exactly. Yeah.
The lesson that I've had to learn is to trust my gut and just show the right things and to really stand by it. And if it's a client or if it's internal, even just kind of having a real clear reason why it is you're doing something, and understanding that if you believe in it wholeheartedly, there's probably some merit to it and that it'll translate effectively to others.
It's all about intention and making sure the intention is clear in whatever you're showing to anyone.
To piggyback off of intention, because I do think that's beautiful. When you're behind the camera, is the intention fun, or what is the intention that you have and the desire to keep taking photos?
It's a combination of a lot of things. Number one for sure is craving that validation. I feel like everyone has a sense of like wanting to be validated of their work. Without validation, you lose the sense of like, why am I doing this thing? What is the purpose of doing things? Um, and so that's definitely number one is whenever I take photos or post anything, validation is definitely in my head. Even though when I do capture something and see something that I like and I post it, I don't really think about it. Even if I don't like get enough likes or get enough attention around it, just the sense of like, oh, there's certain people that like this photo or this video, that's enough validation. I don't need a million likes or like it being featured somewhere to be validated. I just want that feeling like, oh, someone actually likes my stuff.
Validation is the curse of the artist and creative in general,
Yes.
because we make things, first of all, for us. We share them because it's definitely something we have to do as artists. We have to put work out into the world. That's the purpose. Yes, you can make things that are only for you, but they should be seen by others. And we want people to like them. Of course we do, because that's half of the joy is sharing the work. So I'm not hearing that it's about the likes from you. I'm hearing that it's about sharing it and building a sense of community with your fans, your followers, your audience in general. And the amount of likes or clicks or comments just gives you that extra bit of incentive to just keep going and doing it another day. And I think we all need that because sometimes being a creative really sucks when we're in that pit of depression and we're just like, everything I make is awful. I need just
Yo,
something to get me out. Yeah.
exactly. No, I'm not even kidding you. Like, likes helps, comments helps. Seeing that number go up just a little tad on your followers, like, hell yeah, I'm doing something right. I'm not gonna deny the fact that that feels good. And so that's definitely number one. And then number two is every time I take a photo, I get a sense of like kind of that fulfillment of like capturing a moment for myself and experiencing it in a frozen way, that I then get to, like, in a way, in a short amount of time, relive it at some point because I scroll through my feed, I rewatch my videos, and it's just for me to be like, "Oh my god, I was there. I got to experience that. Oh my god, that sunset was the best sunset that I could ever think of." Like, I haven't even seen a sunset like that in any other posts. And so just, like, owning a moment in a way feels very fulfilling.
What is your favorite place that you've ever been? I mean, I guess that goes
Ooh.
back into your second point where you're talking about capturing a moment in time. I'm sure there's many, many, but is there one place that if you were to die today, I'm knock on wood, that you so happy that you got to go?
Yeah, no, I'm ready to die. I've lived my life. No, I'm kidding. That's always a hard question. Everyone asks me that. But it's a tie between, I don't know, it's kind of a low-key place, but it's gotten more popularity recently. Glacier National Park in Montana.
Mm,
That has been I've gone there twice, and I've always been amazed at how that exists. Because I feel like, yes, there's similar places around the world like it, but just for me as a van lifer, being able to access it, just drive around it and just like park somewhere in there and stay there and camp there and have so much access to it, also getting to experience the beauty of it. It
mm.
was such an amazing experience every time I go there. And the drastic terrain change and the wildlife, I've seen grizzly bears there, a grizzly mom with two cubs, moose, everything. And it's a tie between that and also Oregon. Oregon just has a certain beauty. It's similar to like a combination of Washington, California, but Oregon just has like a sense of home that feels like you are always in a cabin anywhere you go in Oregon. Um, and especially like driving around the coast, staying around the coast, and then being able to like quickly move into the woods, into the mountains, and being able to hang out in such close proximity, drive around those two different terrains and lifestyles is I just love Oregon that way. Um, so yeah, lifestyle wise, like I would even move to Oregon, but the play my favorite place that I've been to is Glacier for sure.
So I'm curious about how the process of immigrating shaped you in your childhood and influenced you as you grew into adulthood.
I lived in the Philippines for 13 years prior to coming to New Hampshire, the United States, and that was a pretty even though our family had kind of had a rough time, because we were very poor. I feel like my parents made sure that we had a very comfortable life. And so, yeah, I grew up with my grandparents. We had a lot of family in the Philippines. We still do. And yeah, I think I have about like 50 to 100 cousins. And so growing up in the Philippines always felt safe and secure. But now that am able to reflect on it, we grew up really poor. We would bounce from house to house, and my dad at one point realized like he can't sustain the family just staying in the Philippines, and so I don't remember what age I was. I think I was 8 or 7, like 4 or 5 years prior to moving. He moved to the United States away from the family, moved to like a relative in New Hampshire and started off really small, like worked at a really small jobs, gigs here and there, and then he stuck with a pest control company, and he was able to like saved up enough money to start investing in like moving the whole family to the United States. And that was always been I've always praised my dad for making sure that we're educated, we're in like a path that leads us to um kind of a fulfilling life, even though Asian families, they tend to navigate towards like a scripted lifestyle. Um, I'm still very grateful for how my parents raised me. Um, but to actually counter that, my parents, since they've like moved the whole family to the United States, I was very excited in moving to the United States, but when we moved here, I immediately regretted it. Two of us in our family, so I have four siblings. Two of us were very against the move, and I wanted to go back into the Philippines, like whatever way possible. Realized like, oh, whatever, I'll figure it out here. And so that was actually a really sad time in my life where um, because I moved here in the United States, and I was 13, but I already finished freshman year of high school, and we don't
Mm,
have middle school in the Philippines. And so when we moved here, I remember making us like the school district making us take a test, and if we were smart enough, I didn't have to go back to retake middle school like a couple grades back. And so I passed it, and I remember starting when we moved here in like November to New Hampshire in November. I immediately started school like a week later, 2 weeks later, and just really felt really lost and felt really unsure of what's going to happen to me and why life is even a thing. And now I feel like that's what opened me to like being more existential. And I feel like that was a very critical point in my life to w- like figuring it out is like a tough word to say, but I feel like if I didn't figure it out, I would have kept going in a downward slope. But I feel like because I dove into like being depressed and really thinking through why things were happening and really trying to be understanding of my parents, that kind of stuff, I was able to just come out of that feeling actually like okay after. So yeah, I was a sophomore at 13 in high school, graduated high school at 16, and then because I didn't know, I'm 16, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just followed what my dad wanted me to do. Was like, okay, you can probably do engineering because you're good at math, or do these other things like go to med school or yeah, whatever scripted line there is. And I did try engineering for a year, hated it, and that was a big turning point because I faced my parents and were like, "Hey, I can't do engineering. The only thing I can really think of that I wanna do that I feel like I should pursue is design, because I took a couple of, like, creative classes while I did engineering, and my professors at the time were really pushing me to shifting there and trying out design, and I was very, at that point, like, experimental with, like, Adobe Suite. I had my hands on Photoshop, Illustrator, and was, like, doing all sorts of experimentation around those products, drawing, and I've like felt aligned with what my professors were telling me. And so because of that, I wanted to fight for myself. So this was when I realized like either I fight for myself or I go back into that lost feeling of like I don't know what's happening in my life. So I'd rather like take a grasp on it, even though it's not like a direction that might be super fulfilling based on societal norms. Like design or art is very like when you hear about those type of careers, you're just like, oh, it's not very lucrative. You're not gonna get a lot out of that. So I wanted to make sure like I accepted that fate, but even if that's my fate, it's fine. I like doing it. I feel fulfilled doing it. And so I faced my parents. I was like, hey guys, fuck engineering. I'm gonna switch majors to design. If you like it, great. If you don't, I'll still do it. and my parents are very against it. Like we were yelling at each other, and Filipino parents get very aggressive. So and I still stuck with my gut. I was like, I don't care. My dad was even like, we were helping you fund your college, and now we're gonna back out and you figure it out. We're not even gonna help you with financial aid. Figure it out yourself. I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to fund myself, or if not, I'll just do it without going to college. And so I like signed up for classes, tried to figure it out, almost gave up, but then my dad decided like it's fine, whatever. Try it. If you don't actually feel fulfilled, go back to engineering. And then that was the deal. And I took that deal. And ever since then, I'm very grateful that I took that deal, and I'm very happy with how design has shaped my life. I still go back to the days of the Philippines and how it would have been, if I stayed in the Philippines. Like, what would my life be like? I always try to like fantasize because that's actually how I feel like how my adventure side of my life started was I growing up in the Philippines. I had access to like big land from my grandparents. They owned a big farm, and I was able to just like freely go anywhere, make friends with the farmers' kids, and explore tons of area, run around, and just feel really filled with whatever I was doing. I like thinking about that and really imagining myself like, wh- what would that little kid think of like me now? Like, imagine how excited he would be that I'm where I'm at now. Like, frolicking around in my van anywhere I want to go. Like I feel like that's full circle, and I feel so that to me feels like success. If I were to define success, that's a way of defining it for me.
Beautiful. Kind of looking back at your childhood self and kind of asking him like if they're proud of you. That's an amazing exercise I think that we can all do. And if the answer is yes, they're proud of you, then hell yeah, we did it. We yeah, yeah, that's incredible.
Exactly. That's why I said like I lived a life. I can die now. So,
Nice. I think we can flip the script. I know that you had a couple of questions that you wanted to ask me, so I can just turn it over to you.
I would love to ask you like how have you been able to yeah sustain Rogue and be able to really flourish.
The only way that Rogue has been able to stay alive has been through the commitment of myself and other freelancers that work with Rogue to just really follow like a really strong craft driven process and to make work that we're really proud of and want to share and just really share it really hard. So that's been on Dribble, which is where I get or had gotten, let's say, like 40% of my project. So coming from Dribble, that's kind of slowed down as Dribble's kind of shifted their kind of ideology and perspective. But also winning awards in the web design space has led to projects and some future ones that'll be coming out down the road soon. So maybe when this comes out, there'll be some more kind of hints and teasers about that. But and I think it's an interesting way to get work because I'm very heavily relying on people seeing the work and saying, "Oh shit, that's cool." Because like that's the
Yeah.
feeling I'm trying to capture is that, "Oh shit, that's cool. That's so different. That's so unique." And if I can capture that, then at the end of the day, I've really kind of won. Because if you don't think that, then you'll never hire Rogue. But if you think that, then there's very little competition for hiring Rogue. And we compete against other agencies sometimes, but very often we get comments where it's like, we saw your work, we really, really like it, we want to hire you, but we are talking to a few other people. And they almost like at the end of our conversation, just don't worry about the other people. So it
Mm.
through, I guess, one kindness in speaking with clients and actually caring about what they do. And then the second half is just really doing kick-ass work and really trying to transform their brand for the better. It has turned into a business strategy of kindness and kick-assery, if you will. That's what I'm gonna go with. I'll coin that term, kindness and kick-ass.
Oh, that's amazing. To branch off of Rug even more, I was wondering like what's been the most fulfilling project or learning experience that you've gotten from leading Rogue in general?
Think that you'll like this because it's not so much like a design skill, but I think it's more of a life skill. Through the
That's
process,
even better.
yeah, process of running a business and sustaining a business, I've had to learn how to pay people across countries. So, like how to do wire transfers to other countries. I've learned how to price things and make a profit and use that profit in order to compensate employees, team members, and turn profit into other projects. So, just kind of using what we're making to do um, just personal work and kind of fun projects like that. So, I've learned this skill set that has enabled me, if design were to go away out of my life, I feel like I could leverage the skills of running a business, learning how to like do emails, doing YouTube, just like everything that I've kind of dabbled with and putting my hands in, social media, etc. And so I feel like I could turn all of those skills into another job if I wanted. So if I wanted to stop doing Rogue and open up a coffee shop, I could probably figure that out. I don't know the logistics of running a coffee shop, but I probably could figure it out through, I guess, the school of hard knocks and just a love of coffee personally. So I think that's what my favorite kind of adventure has been, learning new skills and that personal growth as a business owner and a human.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like as a creative, we've all also been talking about this since we were like we had our small studio, I guess, with Ted and Eric. Just like the business side of things has always been a challenge as a designer, as a creative in general. And yeah, learning that skill, I feel like was probably a tough hurdle to get. But I mean, like you said, you could probably use it anywhere now within your life. So that's amazing.
It's definitely the school of hard knocks for that. So like you
Yeah.
price a projects bad and then you realize it's hard to make rent and then you get really scared. so so learning from that, obviously the consistency part of running a creative business is the hardest challenge to tackle. But I think it's really trusting, having faith that something will come around and it'll come around for the right reason.
With Rogue, another question about that. What's been the hardest pill to swallow and like really digest from the experience that you've accumulated?
Eventually you have to give up a little bit of the creative control around the process and projects. If you want to be the one to do all of the work, then you can run your business that way. I wanted to be the one who would be essentially the project guide and to work with other great people so that we're all collaborating together in order to make, let's say, the greatest work of our careers. So turning over the reins and allowing others to run the show sometimes and knowing when to bite my tongue and just to listen has been the hardest pill to swallow because when you're in charge, you get a sense of that. Well, I don't want to say power, but the responsibility, and you want everything to go perfect. But
Hmm.
not all the time are you the one who has the right answer. So trusting others has been a difficult pill to swallow, but has been a really rewarding one in order to kind of grow.
I totally understand that. When I moved to Workday, they had a very structured design team, collaboration space, all that stuff, and it was all very new to me. And at first, like I was like, oh no, I want to go back into my own little shell and design that way. But as I started realizing, like, oh, I could ask help. I could go to another designer and be like, hey, can you figure this out for me? Because I can't solve everything. I feel like, yeah, it's hard to go that route, but once you like cross that line of like, okay, I can't solve world hunger. It's fine. That's totally fine. But if I had a team to help me slowly, bit by bit, I'll do that. maybe figure something out.
I like to go through kind of towards the end of the podcast and go through some fast, fun, furious questions. What is your go-to drink of choice? It doesn't have to be alcohol.
Go-to drink of choice, apple juice.
Ooh, wow, that's a new one. I like it. Heck
I
yeah.
love apple juice. I drink apple juice on the daily.
What is one thing that you couldn't live without?
It's a hard, yeah, it's a hard choice between the van and Mackie. Or Mac. I would say Mackie's a little higher, but yeah, van. I will always have a van.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
I like this question a lot, and I love answering this question. And my answer is always the same. I don't want to I don't want to give advice to my little version or younger version, because I feel like if I talk to my younger self in a way, that will sprout a different version of me. And I mean, that could be a beautiful version of me, right? It could be a different version that I would feel also fulfilled or whatever, like if I shaped it the way that I would want. For me, I feel like the only thing I would say to my younger self is just keep doing you. Like, you don't need anything. You'll learn as you go, and everything will be fine.
Just learn from the lessons of life and let it happen.
Exactly.
I'm curious about this too. If there is a book, movie, or show that has changed you as a person.
Movie for sure. Up from Pixar. I love Pixar. And also The Life of Walter Mitty, or Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Highly recommend both movies if you haven't seen. But especially Secret Life of Walter Mitty really got me into the headspace of like, figure out your own ship. Don't be a cog. And yeah, so ever since I've seen that movie, that was a little bit after I got into photography as well. And that's what kind of started me thinking about like feeling stagnant in Boston. And another reason why I took the chance of moving to Colorado was also that movie. It was like, take the leap, do it, figure it out afterwards.
What I learned from you in design school was to not let the bad shit influence how you act and and your personality as in just how you're presenting yourself in the world, because there's always going to be challenges, but you always had this upbeat, happy personality, and you were always this kind of this person that uplifted everyone through the journey of school. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I've tried to be, when I have those bad days, I'm just like, you gotta be more.
Dude, you're gonna make me cry.
More like Karyll. Yeah, it's like honestly.
That's amazing. Oh, thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I still honestly think about that. I'm just like, no, stop being a little baby. Your life is great. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a perfect place to start to wrap it up, as we're kind of all up in our feels now. But I will pass it off to you. If there's anything that you want to get out to the audience, any closing words before we kind of wrap things up here?
Life should be treated in a way that you are the curator and also the audience. You should like how you watch your movie. It's always going to be fine if you feel aligned with the decisions you make.
I think that's a beautiful message to wrap things up, to inspire and to allow people to marinate on that message a little bit. So in summary, design your life, do you, and stay happy along the journey, because it's going to shape up in your direction, and you will watch the movie of your life unfold into better things.
Yeah, wow. You got it all nailed down. That's amazing.
Thank you so much for being here. And to everyone out there, remember that we are all legendary and have an amazing story of our own. So on the journey, take the time to be kind, grind, and unwind. So let's make the world a better place by working more creatively together.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.